Hey, it's Nancy Shenker, and I am the geezerproofer. Today, we have a really great guest. It's a friend of mine who I've known for quite some time and one of the best professional organizers in the business, Betsy Fine of Clutterbusters.
Hello, hello.
So Betsy's specialty is helping people organize and get rid of their crap. And this is especially a near and dear topic to me as a woman over 50, well over 50, because when my mother died, I had the task of cleaning out her house. And she was a little bit of a hoarder. A little bit is an understatement.
Right.
And I found everything from memos that I wrote at my high school internship to my grandfather's Navy medal, which was actually kind of cool, to all kinds of random stuff, including 300 pieces of costume jewelry.
Okay.
And when my mom was dying, I used to say to her, if you really love me, you'll clean the house before you go.
Right.
And she didn't. So that's been a real life lesson to me. And I think as we get older and we've accumulated a lot of stuff, we do have to kind of ask ourselves, if I were to drop dead tomorrow, as my mother would say, poi, 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 who is going to be responsible for cleaning up all of this mess?
And that happens a lot of times where people or children want their parents to start planning earlier to go through all the items and see what they want to keep or donate or trash or whatever it may be, or put aside or whatever it is. And that happens a lot. And a lot of times the parents don't do it. And then it becomes a burden at the time.
And so why do you think people are so resistant to getting rid of their crap?
Well, I mean, it could be for sentimental reasons. It can be that it's a big task. It can be that it's overwhelming. It could be that they just don't want to. And it's a million different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it always boggles my mind here in Arizona when I see people getting divorced or getting widowed, and then they buy these giant homes and they just move their stuff
from place to place to place. That happens all the time.
Yeah, so...
Well, it's easier to move with all your crap from place to place than to actually go through it all and decide, what do you really need? So, as you know, I moved from Maryland to Arizona, but I had previously downsized even before that. So we went through the whole house. And, you know, even though I'm a professional organizer, it's still, I needed help to go through things and help decide what am I definitely going to keep or get rid of or donate or whatever, sell. And then when I moved from Maryland to Arizona, I downsized again. And then I've since moved and I downsized again. And I loved downsizing because then it's so freeing that, again, you're not like looking at all your stuff and wondering, oh, I should do something about that one day or another. And I mean, for me, I really enjoyed it. But a lot of times people don't enjoy it.
No, and I think so much of it is really also selecting an organizer who you like hanging out with, because it is a very personal experience. And when I first started working with a professional organizer, when I was leaving a big house and moving into a 400 square foot studio, which my younger daughter didn't think I was going to be able to do. I worked with somebody who was okay, but I felt she was a little too much of a bully. And it is a very emotional process. But when I moved into the 400 square foot studio, I worked with a woman who specialized in small spaces. And I learned how to fold my undergarments to the size of like origami.
Right.
It was literally like a 1-inch square. And she taught me the benefits of the hooks, the command hooks that you hang in your closets.
Right.
So it was amazing how much crap I was able
Right.
to fit into a small space. But you're right, it's really liberating when you get rid of your stuff. And I told my daughters that when I die, me and all of my possessions will fit into one dumpster. And that's kind of the goal.
Right, right. Well, but on the flip side, when I went to college, like almost immediately, let's say I came back for, you know, Thanksgiving or something, everything of my stuff was like gone. I was like, where are my photos and where's like everything was gone. They like took minimizing to a whole degree.
Yeah,
so that was
note
a little
to parents, don't throw away your kids'
shit. A little
shit.
too much, right? That was a little too much. But yeah, I mean, deciding on an organizer, it is personal because you are going through items, and sometimes, like in your case, you're going through your mom's house, it's very emotional. So the organizer is also part friend, part like therapist, part not bossy. We never, like my organizers at Clutterbusters, never like push. They maybe will be like, okay, well, let's think about this. Do you tell me when you're going to use this item? How are you going to use this item? And kind of like talking it out so that at one point you may be like, no, I don't need that. Or yes, I do want that. And that's okay. And if you say you want that, receipt from whatever it may be, and you really want it, okay, great. Let's move on to the next item.
Speaking of receipts, my mother had an entire dresser filled with every check that she had written since my dad died. Mm-hmm. And, if she had ever been audited, it probably would have been a good thing.
Right.
But we're talking 5 drawers full of canceled checks. Mm-hmm. So what is the strangest thing, without violating any confidences, that you've come across when you're cleaning out the house of somebody who's either going into assisted living or dying or downsizing?
Just the strangest things only is like we've worked with a lot of hoarder situations, but the only strange part of it is it could be like a pile of stuff, and it could be like literally like a pizza box and then garbage and then something like worth a lot of money. Like everything's all together. Like it's literally going through treasures of items and finding things that, maybe a deed to a house or, something that's like important is in the middle of trash.
Well, that's how we found my grandfather's Navy pin.
Yeah,
it was in a file folder with something completely unrelated.
So unfortunately, in that situation, you do have to hire someone to kind of go through the items. So sometimes people may be like, oh, let's just get rid of everything. But you really never know. There could be something. We find cash and, checks and everything in people's stuff, jewelry, things that are worth something. And you kind of got to go, a lot of times have paid for our services because we found, jewelry or cash or whatever it may be that were way more money, than our services. So that came in handy. The weirdest thing, it wasn't having to do with downsizing or anything, but we were working with a hoarder and she was away from the home. And her family members were having us come and fix the house. And so she knew we were going to be there. So she called me and she's like, listen, I need you to go into my closet. You cannot tell anyone you're doing this. And I was like, okay. She's like, I'm going to give you the code. There's a safe in the closet. I'm like, okay. And then and I open it up and it's like this sex dungeon of like, besides having like drugs and pills and handcuffs, and there were like 100 VHS tapes.
Oh my God. This is like something out of Law and Order SVU. I love it.
I didn't know what to do with it though, because she's like, get rid of it. And I'm like, okay, well, what do I do with like 100 of these random VHS tapes, which no one, has anymore, and these drugs? I mean, like, what am I doing? So it was just between me and her, which was so funny. And like, she was like very prim and proper. So she's like, don't tell anybody.
I love it. I love it. It's so great. Back to what we were talking about earlier, what should you be looking for when you're hiring a professional organizer? For example, if you have an aging parent or you yourself are getting on in years, are there specific organizers who have experience, or you mentioned hoarders?
Mm-hmm. It really just depends. I know that a lot of people sometimes say that they're a professional organizer, but they really have no backing. They're just like, hey, guess what? This is my profession now.
I like folding shit.
Right,
I'm going to become an organizer.
I'm an organizer,
so
right?
How did you get into the business?
So I had worked in HR and recruiting and a whole other mess of things beforehand. And I worked for a big corporation that was sold, and then I was laid off. And so at that point, I was like, okay, well, I have all these skills with HR and recruiting and facilities management and all that. And at that time, people were outsourcing HR, and I had a 4-day week, and I was a pain in the butt, and I had a good salary, and I was like, nobody's going to hire me. Think I'm unhireable. So I knew that there was this niche of, people hired maid services, but then also separate that wasn't as popular in the time was people needed to get organized. And this was back, so I started the company in 2002, which is way, way, way back where it wasn't like a norm like it is now. So then I literally came up with the name, trademarked the name, and then put a random ad in a newspaper, because that's how far back it is, and just said, like, do you need to get organized? And people started calling, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm starting a company. But when I was laid off, I had this severance package, and I said, okay, I'm going to use that as like my seed money. And if I go through it, it is what it is. And if not, we'll just keep going. And obviously now, 20 something years later, we're still, going. But so to hire the organizers, if you're living in any state, I always think it's good, people interview us all the time, asking us, like, how long have we been around? And, are you insured and bonded? And have you done with this situation before? And, talk to the people and see if it's a good fit. I mean, because I was in recruiting before, I used to place people on, short-term jobs. I'm good at placing, like, who's a good fit for a client.
It's like matchmaking.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's very similar.
It was interesting because when we were cleaning out my mother's house, I suggested to my brother, who's much more sentimental than I am, that we hire an organizer. And he didn't have any frame of reference. He's like, why are we spending this money? What is an organizer actually going to do? So not only did she help me sort through my mother's 300 pieces of costume jewelry, but when he was making his decisions and he was having some stuff shipped back to his house on the East Coast, it was actually very efficient. She brought a giant table and laid everything out and made the process so much easier and faster for everybody involved. Because when you lose a loved one, you could either spend the next 2 years of your life going through their memorabilia, or you could just celebrate their memory and move on.
Right.
So I do think that in situations like that, either when you're downsizing, when you're minimizing, when you're going into a smaller space, or like in my case, just during the pandemic, I was accumulating so much stuff in my apartment, I just couldn't stand it anymore. And I have found that having an organized, decluttered home just clears out your brain cells. You're able to be much more efficient because everything has a place.
The clutter around you is clutter also in your mind. A lot of times when we come and work with a client and we do a project, they always say, like, oh, I just feel like a weight's been lifted. I just feel so much lighter and I feel so much better about things. And the thing with getting organized is, let's say someone may bring us in to do one room, let's say, whatever, your closet or bedroom. But then it's almost like, when you paint one room in your house and then it looks so great. And then you're like, oh my God, I got to now paint this room and this room and this room and this room. That's kind of like it is when people have us come in, they do one room and they're like, oh, wait a minute, now I want to do this room and this room and this room. And because it is so exciting and it makes you feel good when things are, have like a home for things. And
So my last episode was about dating and sex, because this podcast is all about sex, tech, and life. And so this one really relates to life and a little bit to tech. But dating, what are some telltale signs when you're meeting a guy for the first time, getting it either in his car or in his apartment? What are some signs of mess that for you are deal breakers?
My deal breakers? Oh, well, I always look at someone's car. So I dated someone a while back and his car was disgusting. Oh, it was so gross. And then it had like a smell that wouldn't go away, and I just couldn't take it. And then finally I found where the smell or whatever it started, and it was a banana
in the car.
Ick. Like God knows how long that.
Yeah, that boggles my mind that in
disgusting.
this era there's so many different styles of bags out there.
So
the fact that people
disgusting.
use the floor of their car. So guys, pay attention to that. We're going to have
I just didn't understand how you could have. I mean, the car's a small space. It's really not that hard to keep clean or organized. So sometimes it really is a good indicator on, what their apartment or house may look like based on the car or how well they take care of it. It can be an old car, it doesn't matter, but if they keep it like really nice and tidy, then that's great. I mean, I've gone out with people that are messy, and it is a problem because sometimes it's just gross and you don't feel at home, if you go to someone's home and it's kind of messy or disgusting.
It also says something about if they know you're coming over and they
Right.
don't empty the garbage
Right.
pail or flush the toilet or
Correct.
get the dog hair off the couch. It kind of says, take me as I am, as opposed to, especially in the early stages, at least like fake it for a little while before somebody really sees a mess.
I think I dated someone. I went into their bathroom. This is gross.
The grosser, the better, Betsy.
And they were either shaving here on their face or lower.
Down there, yes.
And there was hair on the floor.
Ugh.
I didn't notice it right away. And then I was going to the bathroom and I'm like, oh my God, this is so gross. And I couldn't get over it. I just was like, this is really too much.
I think especially in the business, as a writer, if I see that somebody can't spell or, the whole your thing on a
Right.
profile, it's like nails on a blackboard. So I can imagine as a professional organizer, the bar must be pretty high as far, not necessarily dismissing somebody because they
Right.
are not super tidy. It is a business opportunity for you though. So
Right.
I don't want to date you, but I would like to organize your closet.
Right. I mean, it's a skill and not everyone has it, and that's fine. Then maybe, bring someone in. People outsource interior decorators, maid services, personal trainers. Well, guess what? A professional organizer is another thing you can outsource to, help you with your space.
Yeah, and two things that I've done with an organizer that I am now kind of addicted to, and it's definitely a worthwhile splurge because time is money. At the end of the year, I get all of my bills, my paper bills organized for my accountant and helps me put it in an accordion file and drop it off at the accountant's office, and bada bing, bada boom, it's done. As I said, organizing my closets and my drawers has been really big for me. And then once a quarter, I do try to just go through all of my stuff and get rid of things that I haven't touched in a while.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's all good.
Yeah. And, what you find sometimes is you're shopping in your own closet and you end up spending less money. So whatever you've spent as an hourly rate for the organizer, you're kind of saving because you're like, oh, I didn't realize I had 6 black sweaters. Why did I just buy a 7th?
Right. I mean, in regards to like doing the paperwork for like taxes, I mean, just that alone, if someone can't keep their papers in order or, have being able to obtain them quickly, it affects everything. Like if they can't do the taxes on time or they can't complete things in time, it like snowballs.
And it's stressful. If your life is totally out of control, if you can't find things, if things are messy or, you go to get something and you discover it's broken, it just is going to create more stress and aggravation in your life. And that will kill you even sooner.
Right. Yeah.
And we're all going to go eventually, but we don't want to go that early. The other thing I did, which I was so happy I did, is I digitized all of our family albums. And I had a little event. I had a Zoom Shiva, which in the Jewish tradition is how you mourn. And we shared pictures and people were able to weigh in and give their commentary on the pictures, and they're now all up in the cloud for generations to come. So then, yes, having the photo albums is wonderful, but they take up space, which I don't have.
Right.
So now to know that all of that exists somewhere is terrific.
No, that's awesome. Yeah.
And there are a lot of places that do that. I just walked into a digitizing studio with a giant giant Rubbermaid, and I just said, "Here, take these." And it was home movies and slides and VHS tapes, not porn.
Oh, good.
Not that I judge. First of all, I have like a Andy Cohen type truth or dare question for you. If something were to happen to you tomorrow, God forbid, poi poi poi, as Cynthia would say, what is the strangest thing that somebody would find in your house that would be shocking or surprising?
The strangest thing?
Or something you wouldn't necessarily want somebody to find, or you'd want them to find and say, oh, this is weird. I didn't know this about Betsy.
I'm not going to say, but I do have an escape plan. Not an escape plan. Like, I have told a good friend that said, if I pass away, this is where you need to go in my house and take this item. I'm not going to say what it is, and get rid of it. So I've already pre-thought this out.
Yeah, I'm working on my estate plan now, and there's going to be a whole section in my will and trust that says these are the things that should be disposed of immediately. Don't look, don't leaf through my 7th grade diary, just take the entire thing, burn it, trash it, shred it, bye-bye.
Right, yeah. No, not too many unusual things, but no, I do have a plan in action for that. Yeah.
I'm going to invite myself over, Betsy, and go through your closets. So now is the time where you get to do a little plug for your business. So just, what's the name of your business? What do you do? How do people get in touch with you?
So the name of the business is called Clutterbusters. So what we say is, if there's something cluttered and it don't look good, who are you going to call? Clutterbusters. So we help people get organized in their homes or their offices. It can be any, small, up to like 3 hours all the way up to 500 hours. It really doesn't matter. The website is clutterbusters.com. And we're also on Facebook with Clutterbusters, and on Instagram, guess what? Clutterbusters.
Very organized. I like that.
And we also have an 800 number, not Clutterbusters, close. 866-CLUTTER.
Very good. Well, that's the other advantage of starting a business early is that you got the great name. So that's terrific.
So the name, the 800, all that's done.
That's awesome. So thank you, Betsy. This has been really terrific. And please, if you want to listen to more episodes of The Geezer Proofer, you can follow us on Spotify, Apple, wherever you download your podcasts. And again, it's The Geezer Proofer. My name is Nancy Shenker. And keep on listening. We're going to be talking about sex, tech, and life after 50. Peace out.